Hello and welcome to the Xtra Edge, a sports analytics podcast powered by Xtra Sports. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our show wherever you listen to our podcast. I'm Dave Grinjinski, and today we're talking with Paul Coyer. Now, Paul is the assistant sports performance coach at UNC Charlotte, the home of the 49ers. He works with the women's tennis and basketball teams, and today we're going to focus on basketball. First of all, thank you, Paul, for joining us on the Xtra Edge podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Dave.
Well, thanks for taking the time. And I got to say, it is safe to say that you have helped turn things around down there in Charlotte this year. The 49ers women's basketball team has blown past their win total from a year ago. They're in the thick of the American Athletic Conference race, and they're also dominant at home. But you landed in Charlotte after a very successful run over there as the athletic performance coach at Wofford College, working with both the men's and women's basketball teams. But I'm especially intrigued with some of the individual work that you're known for. With the men's team, you worked and developed Jackson Pawelecki. He earned the SoCon Freshman of the Year award, also named third team all-conference, and now he's coming off the bench and scoring 12 points a game at Iowa State. You also worked with BJ Mack, SoCon first team all-conference, now at South Carolina, doing some great things. On the women's side, played a pivotal role in the Terriers' run to their first regular season title and a WNIT berth. But you contributed to the development of players like Rachel Rose, the SoCon Player of the Year, Jackie Carmen, and Helen Matthews, who was named All-SoCon Defensive Team under your tutelage. Now, were the data and analytics along for the ride? We're going to find out. Coach, first of all, congratulations on all of your accomplishments.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I know that has a lot of success behind my name and everything like that. But really, what I tell my girls here and what I didn't tell my girls at Wofford and guys at Wofford is that I'm like a doctor. I prescribe the medication, they take it. And so they really put in the hard work. And I'm just there to help out in any way that I can. They really do put in a whole lot of work over there, and that's why they have so much success. Not a lot has to do with what I do with them. A lot has to do with what they do and how they show up and how they prepare themselves to be successful. And I just play a very small role in that.
Well, on this show, we talk about data, insights, and actions. And we're going to start with the data, which we always do. And I'm always curious to find out how coaches gravitate towards data and analytics. And because it's still relatively new, I think, for a lot of coaches. How did you gravitate towards data? When were you introduced to it? And when did you fall in love with data and analytics for basketball?
Yeah, so it all started when I was at VCU working with the men's basketball team as a grad assistant. And so there we didn't have Kinexon, but we used Polar heart rate monitors. So with Polar, there's only a certain amount they're very limited in the amount of metrics that they use. Heart rate obviously is the biggest one, showing which ranges that they fall into, mileage, sprints that they have, high intensity sprints that they have. So some of that me and Daniel Roos looked at when we were using Polar was sprints. And that just shows effort, basically. In transition, they were really high tempo offense, high tempo defense, pressing you 94 feet for 40 minutes, quick transitions, getting the ball up the floor. And so that's really when I kind of started to look into it. When I got to Wofford, we did not have the means to be able to afford data tracking. And so, I use subjective data. So I sent out questionnaires to the guys every single night after practice, and, they filled out their forms on Google Forms, and I used their responses to kind of formulate a plan going into practice. Gave that to the sport coaches and had meetings with them and just gave my input on how I feel like their bodies were feeling based on the responses, and try to formulate a practice plan based off that. And then I was really introduced to Kinexon from Matt Aldred at Furman and James Diaz at UNCG, two of my really good friends. And And they said, hey man, if we're able to get connects on, if we're able to get it, like you guys should be able to get it too. And so I really started to look into it at the end of the season last year in spring, and made really good connections with the guys at Connects On. And they came in and gave us a trial run with the men's team, and the coaches really liked it. And Dwight Perry, now the head men's basketball coach, he was the interim head coach at Wofford during the spring, during this decision-making process. And from what I know, like they're still in the process of trying to get it solidified. And but I mean, they're really intrigued by it, and it just goes to show that once you get the analytics in front of a sport coach and show them like what it means and break it down for them, like it's really simple, and it's very intriguing, and it allows you to practice smarter, not harder. It kind of gets you away from the old school ground and pound type practice. And so that's kind of when I really started falling in love with it. And then flash forward about 2 months after that, I got the job here at UNC Charlotte, and their contract was up with a previous data tracking company. And my first meeting with the head coach was like, hey coach, like I know our contract's up, but I'd really like to go with Connects On just because of, how what I've heard from them, what I've seen with the data analytics and collection, and how ease of use it is, and the relationships that I can create with those guys over there on a personal basis. And her exact words to me were, Paul, whatever you feel comfortable with, I'm going to let you go with whoever you want. So that's kind of like how we got to Connects On and how I onboarded Connects On here at UNC Charlotte with the basketball team. And also too, the men's basketball team under Morgan Foster, she had been using it for 2 years. And so I kind of leaned on her in the summer as far as like interpreting it, what to look at, what to look for. And, Trey at Connects On is my sports scientist that helps me go into the analytics and everything like that. He helps me interpret it. He's been a huge help in helping me understand and get to where I am right now with it. And so it's been a huge help with us. Our coach, I'm very fortunate enough to work with a head coach that is so into it, has bought into it, and really takes into what I have to say in regards to how the data, what I'm seeing from the data, how the girls are feeling, and formulating practice plan based off that.
Your experience as a player, because I know you played in college. You played 4 years. You had a pretty solid career, collegiate career. Did that play into at all your decision to go with data, or were you able? Did it make it easier for you to say, okay, this would make a difference if I knew this when I was playing? Boy, that would have made a difference. Did you compare your own playing career to data versus non-data?
I mean, not really, to be completely honest, because like I was very young, and I had really no knowledge of like data analytics when I was in college. I didn't even really know that I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach until I was about a senior in high school, when I was applying for colleges and stuff like that. I played Division III basketball, so wasn't a scholarship player, didn't offer scholarships or anything like that. It was for pure joy of the game. But what I will say, when it comes to data analytics and interpreting the data to the coaches, and being a player allows me to understand and communicate better with the coaches, because I know like how players move, how certain positions move and stuff like that. And so when sometimes our guards are always higher than our post players, and I was a post player in college. And so what I can interpret to the coaches, like, hey, like this person, player X is working really hard. Her load is even much higher than most of the guards, because of how she's utilized in our offensive and defensive schemes. Like she might be playing higher up in our press. She might be guarding the best player, having to chase around screens and stuff like that. And so that's going to really drive up her load. That's really going to drive up her exertions per minute, just because of how hard she's working to maybe maneuver throughout the defense or the offense. So it allows me to have a foundation of understanding of the game, to be able to communicate effectively and efficiently to the coaches, to help them better understand like why that is. And then there's sometimes where like, I'm still figuring out because this is my first year using Connexon, where I don't always have the answers. And I go to a coach, I'm like, Coach, I don't know, but what I will tell you is that I'll find out the answer and I'll get back to you on that. And she really appreciates that. She really values figuring out problems and solving problems and coming up with a solution. So something that I can do to help her out as best I can, to help the other coaches out as best I can. And that's really how I feel like I'm very effective in my role.
Do you feel like having the data available gets you the answers you're looking for faster?
Absolutely. Because I look at metrics like I look at accumulated acceleration load, which is the overall load that all the metrics pour into, and that's something that really helps us understand like how the girls are feeling, how hard the girls are working. And our coach is really into the numbers. Like she'll always come to me at practice, like, Paul, where we at? And, and so she's very concerned about her players' well-being, and, she cares, she wants to push them, but she also recognizes, being a former player herself at Iowa, like she understands that basketball is a very demanding sport, and, it's a very long season. It's the longest traveled sport in college athletics. And so we got to figure out ways where we can, one, manage our players' bodies as best we can while also getting as much work done as we can in practice.
And so as you've gone through this process, you've mentioned a couple metrics here along the way. I'm just curious. We call it the metric trifecta. I ask everybody this because, that's one of the things. You have so many to pick from. And I know like the sports scientists will tell you, just try to hone in on 3. Are there 3 that you have come to just love and can't live without?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one that I already mentioned, accumulated acceleration load. Again, that's basically an overview of all the metrics that are collected, put into one number, and it just goes to show what's being put on the girls' bodies, what stresses are being put on the girls' bodies. So that's a big one for us. Every day I send coach a load for the next day of practice, a load range, so to speak. And, based on like what I feel will, one, where we can get the most work done and without overworking the girls, and 2, like managing the girls' bodies so that they're ready to compete, because that's the most important thing right now in the season, is like, especially this time of the season where we're getting down to the nitty gritty of it, down to the end of the season. And, everybody's banged up, everybody's sore. So we want to manage their bodies as best we can. The next one is mileage. We want to keep the mileage down, especially day before game, because, whether you're walking around a mall for a few hours, or playing basketball for a few hours, you're still going to feel tired. Obviously, it's going to be a little different. You're going to feel a little different, but you're still going to feel the same. You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel groggy, and you're not going to feel at your best. And so the way that we can't see it on the computer during the session, but our coaches do a really good job at understanding what drills accumulate the most mileage. And I created a drill library on an Excel spreadsheet, breaking down every drill that we've done since the summer, breaking down between accumulated acceleration load, exertions per minute, mileage, and stuff like that. And I send that to our coach, and she uses that to plan practice. So she has a general understanding, if I do this drill, we're going to cover half a mile. If it's in the half court, maybe 0.75 miles. If it's in the full court, for 8 minutes. So she really, her and I working together, allows us to plan practice efficiently. And then the last one is time. I don't know the article off the top of my head, but I read an article that was given to me by Pat Lewis, our men's basketball strength coach, basically showing, laying out the landscape of practice time, in comparison to how well you do against the spread, of a game. So, and does it give you the best possible outcome? Win or lose, does it give you the best possible outcome to do your best? And so what it came down to was practices that last 75 minutes in duration the day before game, so -1 of match day, gives you the best odds to cover the spread. Again, it doesn't mean that you're going to win the game, but it means that you're going to be able to give yourself the best possible chance to either have a chance to win or get as close as you can to, beating your opponent. And so when I presented that to our coach, at first he was like, Paul, I don't know, like 75 minutes, that doesn't seem like enough time. I'm already being as efficient as I can this year in practice. But, again, she's so bought into data already that, she went with it, and we've had some success. We've had some failures with it. And again, it's not all because of that they're tired. It could be X's and O's that they might have issues with. But again, like we're just trying to give us the best possible chance to win, to compete, to set ourselves up for success.
So by time and against the spread, are you talking about the fact that, okay, maybe you're playing an opponent that's much better than you, and you're a huge underdog going into this game? So explain to me if you're, let's say, the difference between you're a huge underdog and a huge favorite. I don't want you to give away any secrets, but can you, just for somebody like me who's sitting there doing the same thing, going, does he mean against the spread? Can you explain, I guess in layman's terms, the difference?
Yeah. So basically, it gives you the best possible outcome to, so like, let's say the like if you're an underdog and you're plus 5.5, let's just say, it gives you the best possible chance to be 5.5 points under your opponent or better. Let's say now, if you're a favorite and you're minus 7.5, then it gives you a better chance of actually scoring 7 points or more against your opponent, just because of how fresh your body is feeling, and that you didn't spend as much time on the court prior to match day. So that's kind of like what we view it as, is like, okay, we're going to go 75 minutes. We're going to go mainly half court with a few full court segments in. And I don't say specifics, but I give some recommendations based on data that I have collected. Like, hey, like if we do these two drills, one half court, one full court, we are going to hit our mark of what we're going to prepare the girls as best we can for tomorrow, with not doing too much and not doing enough, so to speak. And that's kind of like where that kind of derives from.
Yeah, because I mean that's interesting, and to me, it's the first I've heard of that, and I don't know. I guess I don't want to use the word scary, but it's like you have to think about that stuff, I guess, when you're, because I'm sure that the players are looking at, they're looking at it, right? So it's not like, it shouldn't be the elephant in the room, right? You should embrace it, I guess, right? If you're a huge favorite, a huge dog, or whatever it is. And it's interesting to me. This is the first I've heard of it. This is why we brought you on here, Paul. This is what I'm telling you, man. But to be able to use it, and then also use the, kind of marry the data with it and prepare your team in that sense. That's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah. And honestly, like it's kind of scary to recommend like going to short practice time, because again, being a former player myself, like we practiced 2 hours, 2.5 hours day before game. And, I felt good going into that game. Like, again, like I understood taking care of your body. I understood like getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep, eating good meals, hydrating. Like I got it. Now it's trying to get these girls to understand that as well. But they appreciate the short practice times. They really do. And we manage some girls more than others because frankly, we don't go very deep into our bench. And so we rely on, 3 to 4 girls primarily during a game. And as long as they're feeling good and coach has a good feel for her players, she knows when her players aren't feeling good, and she knows when her players are feeling really good. And so that really helps us that really helps makes making this decision a lot easier and more comfortable than, whether, I was a player or not. It really does help out having the data to support, like, hey, like we did what we wanted to do. It's up to the girls now to perform on the court. And so that's really what data has provided for us in this process.
Well, it's crazy to me, like I always say, the podcast breaks down to data, insights, and action. But it's crazy how closely related the data and the insights are. I mean, it's almost like you automatically get insights from the data. Like if you have the data, like it almost should be one word, and the more coaches that I talk to, the more, I'm leaning that way, where they're almost not separate. They really are married together, and so you talk about these insights. Are there any other insights? Is there anything, and you don't have to name names, but if you think back, like where, there was like that aha moment where you're looking at the data and then you learn something and and then you change something and it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, in the American, because of how spread out we are, we do a couple swing trips. So we're on the road for 5 days. We don't come back home. We just stay in one spot. And for us this year, it was in Texas. So our first swing trip, we played Rice and UTSA. And so up to that point, in this part of the season, we were 3-0 in conference play. And, what we had been doing as far as practice-wise, intensity and duration, had been working for us. So I'm like, all right, like we're going to keep the ball rolling. And we had a very hard, intense game against Rice. And then, staying on the road and traveling to San Antonio the next day, and then practicing that evening, we just kept doing the same thing. We ended up losing to UTSA in a double overtime thriller, man. It was a really good game. Our girls fought to the bone. But we got the short end of the stick. And so, having a conversation with my coach saying like, hey, this player, this is the first time that I noticed that like she didn't seem to have her legs in the game. And so if we can, if you want to call Trey and just see like if there's anything that he's seeing that you can confirm or deny, like if it's from the data, just to kind of reevaluate how we do things. So that's when I read the article. That's when I called Trey and just called him up and just talked through it. And he told me what he was seeing and what I was seeing. And that's when I went to coach and said, hey, like, this is what research shows us, that if we practice 75 minutes, it gives us the best chance to win or perform at our best. And so then flash forward to 2 weeks ago, we did another swing trip where we played SMU in North Texas. So we've been going with this 75 minutes day before game, and we end up losing to SMU, and then we practiced the next day at North Texas, and I ended up flipping what I normally do. So instead of going I break it down into low, moderate, and high days, and I have specific load ranges that I attribute to those days. And so instead of going to moderate low day like I typically moderate day that I typically do, I want a moderate low day. And so we kind of went in a different direction, went a little shorter, and then the next day even shorter than that. And then we ended up winning in overtime against North Texas. And I think that just really helped out with me understanding, using the data and understanding how our girls probably felt after a really tough game against SMU, that, all right, we need to reevaluate on how we do things. And the data really helped us out in figuring that out and applying it then to the next time that we were faced with that situation. And so that's a way that, data helps us out, is it allows us to look at what we're seeing, it lets us to interpret it, and it lets us to reevaluate what we're currently doing, and then apply it moving forward, so that when we're faced with that situation again, we're better prepared for it.
Well, and I think the other thing that shouldn't be lost in all of that is the fact that you have a sports scientist that you can turn to and, and help you kind of make sense of everything, because I mean, and I've heard it before, like, I've heard, well, I'm just a coach, I mean, I'm a, and I get that, because like me, like I don't, I mean, I'm hosting this podcast, but I learn every day from people like you, and then even sports scientists that we talk to, and people, sports performance experts, and so like that has to be nice, and I guess reassuring too, right? When you talk to, I'll say, kind of like the expert on the numbers, who can kind of help you understand what is going on.
Absolutely, and like I said, Trey was a huge help in onboarding me with Connexon and teaching me what to look for. What do these numbers mean? What does this mean? What do exertions mean? What does accumulated acceleration load mean? What does accumulated acceleration load per minute mean? And, early on, I really leaned on him, and now it's kind of like, okay, I don't lean on him as much. But in times where it's like, all right, this is what I think I'm seeing, and this is what I think what it means. Well, let me call Trey up, my sports scientist. Let me call him up and just validate what I'm seeing, or have him say like, no, this is actually what it means. And that's just a way of me continuing to grow and learn and better understand what the data is telling me, and so that I can be more effective at relaying that information to our coaches, and so that they can have a more effective way of planning practices and managing our players as best they can.
So we've heard a couple of instances where the data and the insights led to some actions. And one of the things I noticed on your Instagram is this complex finisher drill exercise that you're doing in the weight room. Can you talk a little, and it's basketball specific from what I understand. Can you talk a little bit about the complex finisher?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got it from a program. I'm blanking on the name. Forgive me on that. But the program is called Built Like a Badass, and so like at the end of every day, there is a finisher. And so what I liked about it was it got the heart rate up. And it was just something that was hard, something that was timed, and it just allowed the players to compete as well. Like, hey, like I got more here. I got more reps than you did in this time. And I do it as well in the summer, when we're doing metabolic conditioning, and it's just an easier way. It's a more fun way to get the girls to compete, to condition the girls, and build some camaraderie as well within the team. And so what I do with the metabolic conditioning station is I put them in groups. We have 13 girls, so I put them in groups of 3, with one group of 4. Just to make the numbers even. And then every week I switch that up, just so that they're not always with the same group of girls. And so they get to compete with each other. They get to learn what drives each player, what drives each individual, and just build that trust, that culture, that camaraderie amongst each other, so that once we get into overtime situations, they can lean on each other. They can talk to each other, and because they understand, like, hey, this is what motivates me, and it just builds a level of trust within the team, that they might not otherwise have had if we just went out on our track and just ran 400-meter sprints. So like, again, the coaches love it. I've gotten great feedback from the players on it. They think that it's fun. They know that it's hard, and they just love the competition, and any athlete loves it. Whether you play basketball, tennis, row, track, football, like they love to compete against their peers, and they love to rub it. They love to have that grudge against each other. And so it's just it makes it fun for me too, instead of just being out there with a stopwatch and a whistle, like, hey, run faster, do this faster, do this better. No, like I get to push them. I get to encourage them. I get to hype them up as best I can. And it just makes it more enjoyable for everybody.
Yeah, I've always heard the phrase, don't coach the obvious, right? And so that, you get away from that though, by doing things like this. And, and like the complex finisher that you're doing, are these things that you do in season, out of season, or both? I mean, do you have specific things that you do? Have you broken it? And has the data led you to your plan now, your season long or your off season long, or let's just call it your year long plan?
Yeah, so I do those in the summer. I do those in the off season and even into September, because the way that I train our athletes, like the off season is when we make our gains, and that's where we can really push them and push the girls, push the athletes to maybe even like overtrain a little bit. Whereas like when it's in season, all right, hey, we're all about maintaining our strength. We're all about getting stronger if we can, but also making sure that you guys are feeling as good to compete when it comes to game day, because the age-old mantra, look good, feel good, play good. Feel good. If you feel good, you're gonna play good. If you don't feel good, if you feel like your legs are heavy, if you feel sore at all, you're gonna get in your head and just say like, hey, I'm gonna play hard, but I'm not gonna play as good as I think I can. And so like, again, that's just being from a former player that I think that's what makes me valuable and letting the girls know like, hey, I understand how you're feeling this late in the season because I've been there before. Like, I understand what it's like to go through a losing streak, because I played with the best of teams. I played with the worst of teams. Like, I understand what you guys are feeling, the emotions and everything like that. And I can just relate to them on a more personal level in that aspect. And so again, like during the season, I want to push them as hard as they can. And I want them to reach levels of intensity that maybe they didn't think that they were capable of. Not saying that I'm not going to push them hard in the weight room during the season, because obviously I do, but it's just in a different frame of reference than when comparing it to the off season.
Well, I think the thing for me, the reason I think it matters so much that you are a former player is that you were a former player not that long ago. Somebody like me, you're trying to, there's definitely, there's going to be a gap there, but I feel, that's why that intrigued me. The fact that you had a great career in college and I mean, it's still college basketball. You're playing all 4 years. You have a great career, and it wasn't that long ago that this had happened. But the other thing too is, I see you in the weight room. I see you practicing what you preach as well. And that's got to resonate, so is that a chance for you to try some of the, like even if it's related to the data and the insights, you're like, all right, I wonder if we did this, what this would do. Do you get into yourself and start doing this stuff and go, okay, I think that might work?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, practice what you preach in the weight room. I always like to try things out on myself because I can understand what they're going to be feeling, when they're going to feel it. Are they going to like, hey, if I do this workout by set 3, like I start to feel fatigued, but like, hey, I gotta push through it. And so I can relate to the girls like, hey, I understand like first 2 sets, they're going to be really good, but by sets 3, 4, 5, like you're going to start to feel a little drained. So if you got to take a little bit more rest time, that's fine. So I definitely try things out on myself. What I think athletes really enjoy seeing is during October when I do Squattober and I post videos of me squatting and everything. I know like when I was at Wofford, the guys would always see it and they'd always say, so what'd you do today, coach? And I'm just like, we had a little seesaw today where we went up and down, or we had a lot of volume today. And again, like it just goes to show to them that, hey, like I do this too, like I get into the grind as well. I enjoy doing it. Sometimes I don't enjoy doing it, but I do it anyway. And I get that from the girls here as well. And even it all goes back even to my BCU days, building relationships with those guys and letting them know like, hey, like I understand like how you're feeling right now, or I train hard too, like I'm going to compete with you. And I was also a practice player at VCU as well. So like I lift and then I go practice, and so if I can do it at, 23, 24, you can do it too, because there was even like one player that was older than I was when I was a GA. So like you can do it too. You know, if she can do it, you can do it at 18, 19, 21 years old. Like, so again, it just helps build that relationship between player and coach. And it creates more buy-in to the process as well.
Well, I know you're doing the action end, but have you ever put the wearable on and collected data on yourself?
I have not.
Okay, I was just wondering.
That's one thing that I haven't done. I've joked to some of our practice players here that do a really good job for us in preparing our girls from a X's and O's standpoint. Like that, I'm going to put the wearable on you one day because we do got clips, and but I just haven't done it yet. But I think that'd be interesting to see, from one of our male practice players that is in every single drill from start to finish, what their load is like in comparison to what our girls look like.
Yeah, no, I mean, and honestly, from that perspective, absolutely. Not for just let's have some fun and see how, fast I can run type thing, but yeah, just for a comparison's sake, that's why I was wondering, because I would been like, yeah, that's pretty smart to do. I think that, I definitely think it. Let me ask you this, as we round third and head home here, you've made this transition from Virginia Commonwealth to Wofford, now to UNC Charlotte. Is there anything that you think is missing from the technology or if your answer is, look, I'm still trying to figure all this out and, I'm not really sure, that's fine. It's cool. But I'm just wondering, is there any, something that comes up every once in a while and you're like, man, oh man, I wish I knew that.
I still think I think that's a great question. I still think I'm a little too green to answer that question. I think right now with all the metrics that Connexon is collecting already, I think it's a little overwhelming right now. But if you ask me in, 2 to 3 years, I'd probably have a better answer for you on that. But I think right now for me, with what I have, especially with my trifecta, I think I have enough. I think one thing, especially that I'm gonna, connect with Trey on is going to be, and I know that they just updated the system, but is menstrual cycles, especially in female athletes, and how that has an effect on their load and how they're feeling. And not only on the court, but also in the weight room. That's been the biggest transition for me from going from working with primarily men's basketball to women's basketball, not only understanding how different the game is played, but also from a biological standpoint of how training affects their menstrual cycles as well. And especially now that I'm only working with female athletes, like, how can I better understand what they're going through that I can never go through, and just better serve them in that aspect.
You stole my thunder, because I was leaning to that, because that is one way. That's one way we're going. We have flagship schools now. We have even European women's soccer teams who are helping us out with this research, and everything that we're hearing is we're completely different entities, men and women, and so I'm glad to hear that is on your radar, and and that you are going to go forward, because I know, and a lot of this research is done quite simply. It's like daily questionnaires and things like that with 1 or 2 questions just to try and find out and set this up so we can create some women specific data.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to be huge moving forward with this product. And I think it's going to do tremendous things serving those female athletes and giving them the best treatment that they can, and setting them up for success to perform at the highest level that they can.
You don't, I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer it if you want, but I'm wondering, in your experience so far, like, have you seen it? Without having the data or any kind of insights to tell you anything, but have you had, your female player say, or maybe just be a little off or whatever, and you notice and something's going on? Because the other part of this is the well-being part of coaching women athletes. And like I said, I don't want to, you don't have to, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but if you see it, if it's a yes answer, just leave it at yes. That's fine. We're good. But I'm just curious in your experience.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it, and our girls are very, I hear them talk about it. They're on their cycle, and I don't get uncomfortable with it. I grew up with 4 sisters, so I understand it. Like it's not an uncomfortable situation or conversation to have with me, and being transparent with the girls and just letting them know, like, hey, like if you are feeling off today, like just let me know, like we'll adjust if needed. But it's not, I don't let them use it as a scapegoat to get out of what we're doing for that day. But I hear them talk about it. I hear them like say like, hey, I'm a little off because I'm on, it's my time of the month right now. And so that's something that, again, I'm still learning how to navigate through and navigate with them on that, just so that, we're working as best we can through that time.
Yeah, like I said, that's a big part. Like it's the well-being part of it. And as long as everybody's on the same page, nobody's trying to get out of anything. It's just understanding like, hey, I got some things going on. I mean, and even it's for anybody. It could be, it could be, there was a death in the family or something. You know what I mean? Like there's all that stuff that factors in, and again, it goes back to that culture you're creating.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's just being able to read your athletes and being able to have that trust with your athletes to have those kind of tough conversations. And they could be a little uncomfortable, but again, if you're just open with them and having that conversation and them knowing that they can come to you and have that conversation with you, man, that's going to create the best relationship with that athlete.
That is just awesome. I commend you for really embracing this. And honestly, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get some real hard evidence, behind what everybody's kind of been thinking over the years and really hone in on this. Paul, this has been awesome. If anybody has a question for you after hearing this, where can they reach you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty active on Instagram. I don't do a lot of posting really anymore, but like if they DM me, I'm always checking my messages. I hate having unread messages in my inbox. So
you and me both.
I'm always checking that to get that red dot out of there, and so they can reach me on there. They can reach me on my phone. I'm always on my phone, and then also email. I mean, those are the 3 big places that they can reach me at.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, you really you provided some great insight here. The against the spread thing, like that came out of left field. That was phenomenal. And then I love the fact, the work that you're doing with your women athletes. I really, really appreciate it. It's great to hear. And I can't thank you enough for taking some time and coming on and talking with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We'll get you back. We'll get you back at some time. Good luck, for the rest of this season and beyond. But we'll get you back on here, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you know a great coach like Paul who's doing great things, winning games, and doing it with sports data and analytics, we would love to hear about him. We'd even ask him to be a future guest on the podcast. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Connexon Sports, or look for us on LinkedIn at Connexon Sports and Media. Remember, we want you to innovate the game by collecting the data, getting the insights, and then turning those insights into action. We will see you next time.